Greetings, dear viewers. This is the Cross Moda channel. In this episode, I will tell you about the fastest production motorcycle of the 1950s and perhaps the world's first superbike. This production machine was ahead of its time and could reliably accelerate to a mind-blowing 200 km/h, while its special version for racing and records could boast a result of 240 km/h. This motorcycle is the Vincent Black Shadow and its racing modification, the Black Lightning. Enjoy watching. In the late 1940s and the first half of the 1950s, no production motorcycle could go as fast as the legendary Vincent. And to understand how this rocket came to be, we need to give a bit of context. The history of the Vincent Motorcycle Company began in 1928, when Philip Vincent acquired all the rights to Howard Raymond Davies motorcycles. Even at that moment, the conditions were set for producing high-quality, powerful, and technologically advanced motorcycles. Firstly, Howard Raymond Davies motorcycles were high-class machines produced by Howard Raymond Davis, who was a skilled engineer and racer. His machines performed quite successfully in races on the Isle of Man. Secondly, in 1928, this company came into the hands of another skilled person, Philip Vincent, a talented young man from a wealthy family, who by the age of 19 had already built a highly technological custom motorcycle based on a production Birmingham small arms. Needless to say, these were excellent motorcycles right from the start of production. However, at first, all Vincent motorcycles were equipped with engines from other companies. The next very important event, which 2 decades later would give the world the fastest motorcycle, happened in 1932. At that time, a talented engineer, the Australian Phil Irving, joined the Vincent Company. He would be the one to develop Vincent's own motorcycle engine. After the failure with the power-limited MAG engines at the 1934 Tourist Trophy, Irving and Vincent formed a remarkable and well-coordinated duo of talented engineers. In 1936, the legendary 1-liter V-twin Vincent engine appeared. There is a legend that 2 tracing papers with the drawings of the single-cylinder 500 were shifted by a gust of wind from an open window in such a way that the crankshaft axes on the drawings lined up and the cylinders formed a V shape. And all of this caught the eye of Phil Irving. How true this is, it's hard to say. It's a beautiful legend. Be that as it may, the V-twin appeared on Vincent motorcycles, and even before the war, these motorcycles were famous for their power and speed. They even outperformed the excellent Bro Superior, which was created by George Braw during the World War II. The company worked hard for the needs of the front and entered the post-war period with confidence. The military. The contracts brought in a decent profit and allowed them to double their machine fleet. In 1946, the Vincent Company returned to its pre-war activities, namely the production of premium, fast, and powerful motorcycles. At that time, production resumed for the updated 45-horsepower Rapide Series B model, which reached a top speed of 180 km/h and was the fastest production motorcycle of its time. But there was a problem. Phil Vincent and his team were receiving requests from British motorcycle enthusiasts who wanted more performance. Vincent and Irving turned their attention to a tuned version of the Rapide, created by the company's test rider, George Brown. Phil Vincent turned to his financier, managing director Frank Walker, who was the only member of the management team who was indifferent to motorcycles, and suggested putting the new model into production. Walker wasn't interested, and he refused to allocate money for the development of the model. However, this refusal did not stop Phil Vincent, Phil Irving, and workshop manager George Brown, who built 2 motorcycles according to the new specifications. The prototype with frame number R2549 was completed on February 16, 1948, and handed over to moto journalist Charles Markham, who wrote for the magazine Motorcycling. His article appeared in the May 1948 issue, in which he stated that he personally accelerated to 196 km per hour on the EFIR. It was a success, and at that point, it didn't matter whether the financial director Frank Walker approved the idea or not. The new motorcycle made a loud statement about itself, and there was no turning back. That same year, in 1948, Black Shadow made its debut at the Earl's Court exhibition in London. The motorcycle was released. It was magnificent. At the heart of the machine was a 4-stroke overhead valve V-twin engine with a 50-degree cylinder angle and a displacement of 1 liter, producing a maximum power of 55 horsepower. The lubrication system used a dry sump design, and the engine's compression ratio was quite low by today's standards, all because the gasoline of that era had an octane rating of about 55-60. In fact, it was a modified power unit from the Rapide. For example, the intake ports in the cylinder heads were carefully polished to optimize the flow of the fuel mixture. When creating the Vincent V-Twin Series B and the Black Shadow model, Phil Irving decided to reduce the weight of the motorcycle by using the engine as a stressed member of the frame. This decision was dictated by the raw materials market in Britain. In the post-war period, steel was in short supply and in high demand, while aluminum was relatively abundant, and stainless steel was also readily available. This approach made it possible to achieve a motorcycle weight of around 208 kilograms. Such a fast motorcycle required a good chassis and effective brakes, and Vincent had both. The rear wheel suspension used an innovative patented system by Phil Vincent. The swing arm pivot passed through the gearbox, and the twin shock absorber was located under the rider's seat. Early models had a front fork similar to the one on the Rapide model, a parallelogram type with a spring, but it lacked torsional rigidity for such high speeds. Philip Vincent was not a supporter of the telescopic fork. Together with Irving, he developed his own design called the hydraulic. This system was an evolution of the Springer fork. For the beams and links, Vincent used forged aluminum alloy instead of scarce steel, and hydraulic shock absorbers replaced the springs. The braking system was worthy of the machine's power and speed. The Black Shadow had 4 drum brakes on its 2 wheels, 2 on each wheel, with drum diameters of 180 millimeters, and the hub was finned for effective heat dissipation. A great motorcycle should be excellent in every aspect. The design of the Black Shadow can be described in one word: blackness. The motorcycle was radically black, even the engine, casing, cylinders, and heads, and on the black tank there was a neat inscription, "The Vincent," which complemented the motorcycle's austere appearance. A huge 5-inch speedometer marked up to 150 miles per hour for overseas markets with the metric system had its limit at 240 kilometers per hour. In September 1948, a special racing version of the Black Shadow was introduced to the public, which received its own name, Black Lightning. Yes, my friends, for Philip Vincent and the brand's fans, even 200 kilometers per hour was not enough. The standard Black Lightning came in a racing trim with magnesium alloy components, special racing tires on alloy wheels, a single seat, and aluminum fenders. This made it possible to reduce the weight to 170 kilograms. The engine featured stronger connecting rods, enlarged intake ports, polished rocker arms, and racing carburetors. It was available with a compression ratio ranging from 8:1 to 12.5:1. The power output was 70 horsepower, and the top speed reached 240 kilometers per hour. In 4 years, up to and including 52, only 31 units of Lightning were produced. Production of the sports version was discontinued due to financial problems. Of all the numerous sporting achievements, Vincent motorcycles became most famous for their record-breaking runs. American Roland Free set out to break the United States national record on a Vincent, which had belonged to Joe Petrali since 1937, who reached a speed of 218.8 km/h on a Harley-Davidson. After getting his hands on a Vincent Black Lightning in 1948, he raised the American motorcycle speed record to 263.135 km/h on a bike without any fairing. On the surface of the Bonneville salt flats, the rider lay horizontally on the motorcycle to reduce air resistance. In 1937, German racer Ernst Henny set a new world speed record for motorcycles on a BMW with a fairing and a supercharger. He reached a speed of 279.44 km/h, and surpassing this result became a coveted dream. Some Vincent motorcycle owners attempted to break the record multiple times. Luck came in July 1955 to the New Zealander Russell Wright on a Vincent Black Lightning motorcycle, fitted with a special fairing. He set a new world record of 297.67 km/h. In addition to excellent dynamic and performance characteristics, Vincent motorcycles were famous for their reliability. Here are a couple of stories as examples. At the Autumn Motorcycle Show in 1951, a young man named Tony Rose approached Philip Vincent. He worked as a private detective, was an avid motorcycle enthusiast, and had recently purchased a Vincent Black Shadow motorcycle. Tony Rose was concerned about one question: how many miles could this machine run without a major overhaul? Upon hearing the answer of 100,000 miles, Tony decided to put it to the test in practice, enlisting the financial support of the Vincent Honest Club. In December 1951, he set out on an unprecedented endurance run, covering over 300 kilometers a day, and by July 1952, he had completed half the distance. The motorcycle was inspected at the manufacturing plant. The shocked mechanics discovered that due to a cracked oil line, all the oil had leaked out, and the engine had run for some time like that, but everything was resolved by replacing 2 piston rings and a cracked valve spring. New tires and chains were also installed. Rouse continued his marathon, and on January 31, 1953, the coveted goal of 100,000 miles was reached. There were no serious troubles in the second half of the run, and the motorcycle kept its fine appearance. The most incredible endurance record for Vincent machinery belongs to Stuart Jenkins. This gentleman riding a Vincent Black Prince motorcycle, the successor model to the Black Shadow with fiberglass fairing, managed to rack up 721,703 miles. For reference, that's 1,116,468 kilometers. By the mid-1950s, the company's financial situation had become really bad. Vincent and Irving produced excellent equipment, but it was mainly aimed at wealthy people and was made in small quantities. Wealthy lords and gentlemen preferred Jaguars or Ferraris over motorcycles. Financial injections from wealthy fans of the brand saved it from collapse twice more, but this couldn't go on for long. Philippe Vincent did everything he could to keep the company and production going, but he didn't succeed. On December 16, 1955, the last motorcycle was assembled. The legend of Vincent remained along with hundreds of motorcycles, many of which still faithfully serve their owners to this day. A total of about 1,750 Black Shadow motorcycles were produced, and back in 1948, 15 units of the White Shadow motorcycle in white paint were assembled. With the closure of the company, the story of the Black Shadows did not end. In 1965, the Swiss man Fritz Egli created a special workshop to modify Vincent engines and install them in frames of his own design. The motorcycles were named Egli Vincent. Fritz managed to boost the Black Shadow engine from 55 to 75 horsepower, and the speedometer scale ended at 250 km/h. By the way, there's a feature about Fritz Egeli's extremely interesting replicas and his workshop on the channel. Here's a pop-up suggestion. Attempts to revive production were made already in the new millennium. Only one attempt was successful, the Irving Vincent Company from Australia, which produces small batches of sports motorcycles whose engine design refers back to Phil Irving's original construction. The original Black Shadow and Black Lightning, even after 70 years, can still compete with many modern motorcycles. This is what the fastest production motorcycle of the 1950s was and remains. This brings my story to an end. This was Cross Moto Channel. Thank you very much for your attention. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like or leave a comment, subscribe, and share this video with good people. Special thanks to everyone who supports me financially. See you next time.